Welcome back to the Goku Report. Now, like I said, this channel is going to be strictly for multiple things, like I may occasionally talk about sports, religion, spirituality, occasionally politics, and other stuff. But I will also be doing any future, like, music reviews or top 10 lists, movie reviews, anything that doesn't revolve around specifically video games for the most part, as well as animated movies and things of that nature. However, like live action films, like rock albums, and things like that, however, will qualify on this channel. And this will be my first movie review on this channel. And the first film review I chose to do on my secondary channel is a great suspense horror film from a few years ago, in my personal opinion, the best of the Conjuring cinematic universe. And that is Annabelle Creation. This is a review, of course, for Annabelle Creation. Now, this is a prequel, of course, to the original Annabelle film, which was also technically a prequel, so it's a prequel of a prequel. Anyways, it gets kind of confusing once you get into it, because there's now up to like 7 films, I believe, in the cinematic universe. Because you have 3 Annabelle movies now. But anyways, in my opinion, the best out of the universe. And I was not the biggest fan of the original Annabelle film. I don't think it's as bad as some people say it was, but I still feel it wasn't a great film overall. There was definitely issues. I give it points for the demonic entity, but that's about it. However, creation. Starts out basically simple enough. A scene getting created, this doll, by a man which we find out handcrafts dolls, and that's his speciality, as you would say, in the beginning, with his wife and his young daughter, Annabelle, which ends up, bad things happen. She ends up getting hit by a car, ends up dying. Then we jump forward several years, and we see children coming from a orphanage, because the church or Catholic orphanage closed, so they are invited to stay. We find out that the man's wife keeps a mask on, as well as hides, obviously, certain things. And there's 2 specific main key younger girls that end up having key roles to play in the story of this movie. Anyways, one of them ends up discovering the room, which was locked, and she was told by the father, originally, of Annabelle, to stay out of the room, which belonged to his deceased daughter, Annabelle. She ends up going in, and she ends up finding a key and stuff to unlock, in Annabelle's room, a locked up closet with tons of papers put on round on the walls, and that ends up pieces of the Bible. And it was used as a supernatural prison of sorts to keep the entity that is possessing the doll, of course. But we find out later on in the story, and yes, there is spoilers, but if you haven't seen this movie by now, why are you even watching the review? Do yourself a favor and check it out if you haven't watched it. Anyways, you go on in the story, find out what happened. At first, they believe like the spirit of their daughter is trying to contact them and stuff, and wants to be offered the doll's body, and they end up offering it because they thought it was the spirit of their deceased daughter. Little did they know it was actually a demonic entity. So it ends up attaching itself to the doll and uses it as its basically as the tool in order to wreak havoc, which is why it ends up putting locked up. But before that, we find out these elements and stuff that change. At first, the young blonde hair girl ends up getting taunted and attacked by the spiritual entity. And briefly, in Annabelle's room, she comes to what she think is the spirit of Annabelle and asks the spirit, "What do you want?" And then, like, evil, glaring CGI face with evil eyes and stuff and razor teeth and stuff basically says, "Your soul." So we see things that happen. At the end, she tries to get away because she has leg issues and stuff. But, anyways, things happen. She ends up getting sucked to a ceiling or something, disappears, and then she reappears later on with holding the doll because we then realize, of course, the entity has now possessed her body and now starts messing with her best friend. And so things get creepy and stuff. She ends up, I remember at one point under the stairs and stuff, she sees the doll briefly, and then you see like an evil glare or a grin with eyes disappearing into the dark with the doll. Those were really nice touches. That's the thing, the suspense build up, it doesn't have a ton of fake jump scares, and I appreciate that. I like good gradual build up and a good payoff. I don't like cheap, crappy jump scares in my horror movies. I actually want a good payoff. Good pacing is key to a great horror film. Something the first Annabelle could have learned. Annabelle Comes Home is definitely better than the first Annabelle, but not as good as this, in my opinion. This is the crowning jewel. I did not expect to love this movie as much as I have, and the payoff is great, and in the end we learn that that blonde girl grows up and becomes that psycho that ends up, of course, killing her parents at the beginning of the, or rather, at the beginning of the original Annabelle film. So basically, Annabelle creation at the very end goes right into literally the beginning of the first Annabelle movie. It goes in, very perfect job, definitely connecting the two films. Overall, on my grading scale, what do I give Annabelle creation? I do think there's one or two issues here and there, but it's not enough to keep it below at least an A rating. And I'll be honest though, in the end, I'm gonna give Annabelle Creation an A+. Easily the best horror film I have seen since probably, at least for me, most enjoyable horror film since probably Sinister 1 and the original Insidious. That's how much I like this movie. I ended up liking it more than Insidious Chapter 3, which is definitely saying a lot. But I love Annabelle Creation. I hold it very highly. If you're curious to hear some other thoughts, my favorite films, check out my top 10 favorite horror films of the 2010s. But with that said, this was my review of Annabelle Creation. Let me know if you'd like me to review any more of the Conjuring Universe films like Annabelle 1 or Annabelle Comes Home or The Conjuring 2. I can, however, say I will never review Lay or whatever Lorraine. That movie was horrible. Now, if you're curious, I might be willing to review The Nun. I didn't mind it, honestly. But with that said, I'll see everyone next time. Same YouTube time, same YouTube channel. Stay safe.